I feel really.
Okay, very good. Well, let's start then. This is Pushing Boundaries, a podcast about pioneering research, breakthrough discoveries, and unconventional ideas. I'm your host, Dr. Thomas R. Verney. My guest today is Klaus Käppeli, MSc, a psychologist and psychotherapist of the Federation of the Swiss Psychologists, FSP, with a private practice in somatic psychotherapy in St. Gallen, Switzerland. He is the author of Birth in the Classroom, Early Experiences Impact Day-to-Day Life in School, published in German by Matthias Verlag in Heidelberg in 2019. Klaus works with adults, families, couples, young adults, children, and babies. You and I, Klaus, we first met, I believe it was at a conference in Bristol. Have I got that right? Several years ago, you presented these histories of several children who entered life by way of assisted reproductive techniques. Do you remember the name of that paper, Klaus?
Yeah, it was creating creating a human being. What's possible?
What's possible? Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So tell us what's possible. Tell us a little bit about it in your own words. Take your time.
Yeah, so when I'm talking about the assisted reproductive technology, of course, so many things are really brand new in our world now. So many parents, they are helped when in receiving children. But anyway, it's not just the technique what's possible. It's also more dynamic process going on in the background. So for me, it's more, yeah.
Let me just stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
For our viewers, for our audience of viewers who don't know what assisted reproductive techniques are, can you name them? What are they?
Yeah, okay. This is a technique that helps a parent to get pregnant. By, for instance, when the egg cells are taken from the mother, and the sperm are brought together under the petri dish, and then we call this the IVF, the in vitro fertilization, or the more common technique today is the ICSI, the intracytoplasmic sperm injection, and we have an institute here in St. Gallen too. And recently I had a really beautiful contact with them and a talk with them because I'm really interested what they are doing and how they are doing, and to bring in my point of view when we are working with these issues.
So essentially, we are talking about test tube babies, right?
Yeah.
Common. Yeah. And what about, do you also deal with babies born as a result of surrogate motherhood?
Yeah, I have some in Switzerland. It's not allowed to have the surrogate mother, but I have some coming from Spain, for instance, and so it's but it's not so common. I had once an 8-year-old girl. She came in and said, "Well, I have a gift mother," and then she told me that she was the egg cell was from another mother that brought into her mother now. And this is a little bit different from a surrogate mother. And I'm really glad what I hear at the moment, what's going on, for instance, in Ukraine. It's really a disaster. And how all these, how many people are really making a lot of money coming out of them, and they are really using or abusing the situation, the economic situation of many women, for instance, Ukraine, and so it makes me really sad what I see there, and I recently saw a documentary about that, and it's really It makes me so sad to see all these situations and all these children. And for me, the more important is, of course, we can't be against all these techniques. That makes no sense. But what I'm interested in is what's the imprint babies are taking out of these procedures. And that's the more important part of me, and how the children are telling me in the therapy sessions what they know and where they came through and so on. But this is an issue I am going to talk about in October in the World Congress about all these issues, what babies really know, and it's really fascinating. I'm so really touched what they really know without ever having been talked about. It's amazing.
So can you tell us about a recent case that you have treated?
In assisted reproductive technology, yes, the recent case is a girl. She's now 4 years old,
Okay.
and the parents came in with her because she had so terrible crying attacks during the night. And that's an issue I hear so often when children are received by artificial techniques. It's not only there, but I can see it so often when children are received by artificial techniques. These attacks during the night, especially during the night, are coming in. And what I did, I just acknowledged the girl that she might have an experience, a deep experience, what it means not being protected, being exposed to interventions coming from the outside, and now and mostly during the night, all these pictures are showing up. And I'm so sorry that she feels at this moment not really protected. But now you parents are here. They are safe. You can feel safe, but back then you haven't felt safe at all. And this is what comes to your mind now, and it's a body memory at the moment, and it doesn't happen in reality. You are safe with your parents, and that was really, yeah.
So this 4-year-old child, how did you get her to go back to the original trauma?
I talked to the parents. How they came to the decision to have a child by artificial insemination, and that was really amazing. How they didn't really know what's going on, really what's happening on the level of the soul of the incoming child. But when I talked to them, they were really open, and they could see, okay, yes, this makes a huge difference. Instead of, for instance, one part is when these children are received, they are observed the whole pregnancy, because technicians, obstetricians want to know how the baby is behaving. And this is important to know. In a natural, during natural pregnancy, it's up to the parents whether they want to have an ultrasound or not. And here it's a program that's given from the outside, from the technical side, because they want to be safe and to want to know, because these techniques is for winning and for having success, and not for failing. That's so obvious. And by the way, I have had another girl. She showed me what does it mean not to fail and to have success all the time. It's really impressive how these children are showing us what they went through and what they.
When you say, sorry to interrupt, but just trying to. When you say they showed me, how did they do that?
For instance, I had a girl, she was 3 years old, and a mother told me, this girl, she can't lose. When they are making playing with each other and she is losing, she stops all of a sudden and goes away. it's not possible that she can lose a game. And so I did a game with her, a play with her, a ball play with her, throwing a ball towards her and towards me and so on. And I challenged her by I won. And then she said, well, you are, and that was a totally new expression, you are the super winner. So she wanted to say, I won, but you have a little bit one more. So, and mother, she said it in German, and mother said, I've never heard this term before. And for her, it was so clear. She could see what I have done, but she couldn't leave the place of not having won. And that's the important place, and how she created a new word to say, I won, but you won a little bit more.
So how did you sort of trace this back to the in vitro fertilization?
So it's not, I never can say it's when then. It's not a linear correlation. It's not possible. But when I see how the child is showing up special symptoms, and this symptom is really strong and doesn't go away over a long period of time, then I really I'm open to see, okay, maybe there is something else that child wants to tell me. And this is important for me. It's, of course, every child is crying for some period of time and so on. That's normal. But when it persists, that's for me the impulse to look further back to the very, very beginning. A very interesting example I had with a 1.5-year-old boy. I supported the parents during the pregnancy already, and this boy was received by ICSI, the intracytoplasmic sperm injection, and everything went well so far. He was born by cesarean section. That happens quite often. And but 1.5 years later, she called me and said, well, I have to call you. I have to come with my son to you. And then I said, well, what's the reason? And then what's
the problem, really?
Yeah, what's the problem? Yeah, what's the problem? And then she said, well, it's so funny. Every time when I'm so busy, I'm very concentrated, and for instance, when I'm cooking in the kitchen, or the father when he's working at the computer and he has to concentrate very, very strongly, he goes, and my son goes and bites me into the calf. And then I smiled and said, well, I laughed and said, why are you laughing? Okay, I'm going to tell you when you're coming into my office. And then when he came in, he just looked at me, and then we talked about why mother is coming with him. And then I just said to him, well, you mustn't have an experience of there is something painful and you can't escape. You can't avoid it. You just have to tolerate it. I think you have an experience. This is what mama is telling me. When she is cooking, for instance, you're coming and biting her. I think you want to tell her, to show her something. And you have to know, when with the ICSI technique, then the egg cell is fixed with a cup, with a vacuum cup, that the egg cell can't escape. And then the needle is coming in, and the sperm is injected directly into the egg cell. And for me, it was something like this. He did the same. When mama couldn't escape or papa couldn't escape, he just showed them how painful it is when it's not possible to escape. And from this moment on, I never told him about what really happened. But from this moment on, he never did it again.
Hmm.
It
Amazing,
disappeared.
amazing, amazing. So how many children of that of that sort have you seen over the years? Approximately how many children?
Oh, approximately at the moment, it's more and more. It's there are about 50 children.
Children.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite a lot. It's increasing here in Switzerland a lot.
And in terms of the 50 children approximately that you have seen, can you make some generalizations in terms of the problems that they have and perhaps the etiology, like the causes of those problems, the precipitating events?
So it's difficult to say something special, but what I see a lot is one place is what I already mentioned, this feeling of what's happening when I'm losing.
Okay.
I can't lose because I'm disappointing people and so on. And of course, parents are following this way for having success. That's clear, and this goes on to the child. So when a child is failing or something like that, it's so difficult to really accept it. And so this is one characteristic. Another one is I have to be on active alert, otherwise they overwhelm me. That's another thing. So that these people are, these children are so often, what I see so many times, they are diagnosed as ADHD. And for me, it's not this one. It's a learned habit, a learned behavior that's coming from a very, very early experience. And when we are going there uh, and um, and discover this place, and we can talk about this place and what's happened then, and what's now, what's changed, what has changed, what's new now, and what had disappeared now. Then it goes away, and then and for me, ADHD is not disappearing all of a sudden. It's a long-term disease, and so we have to know. So for me, it's really important to know. When I hear something like that, I go back to this place. Okay, maybe it could be something else, but we don't know at the moment. And then yeah,
So are you saying that they are overly, abnormally hyper vigilant?
I think so. They are going. There is a tendency.
Mhm, mhm.
There is a tendency. Yeah.
Remember in your paper in Bristol, you talked to us at that time about all kinds of sort of toys that you have in your room and
Yep.
how children sort of you encourage them to play with whatever sort of they want to play, whatever appeals to them. Are you still doing that?
Yeah. So what I do, I have in my practice a lot of toys, not so many, but there are, for instance, a tunnel, or I have a chair that looks like an ovum or something like that. And so, but the children, they choose what they want to play. I never give something. I say, okay, let's do this or let's do that. For me, it's that this is an intervention coming from the outside. And so when I follow um, this protocol, then I just recapitulate what's already what the children have gone through already. And so what I'm doing, I just sitting with the parents and with the children and let them choose what they really want to do. And it's so often they really sometimes at the end, towards the end of the session, they choose something. Okay, oh, thank you that you're telling me. That's so important that I know, this is what you are interested in. And next time when you are coming, maybe we can continue. But you know, you decide. So for me, it's really, really important that at the moment when children feel safe and protected, that's the most important aspect. They have to feel safe and protected, and then they open more and more. And they can say, okay, I can tell you what I know. of course, knowing symbolically. Their body knows.
Mhm. Could you give us an example of what kind of a toy or object recently one of your children chose, and how it sort of related to her problem or his problem?
So yeah, what I did, it's another girl who came in the first time, and she was, it's also about artificial insemination. I don't know whether I told this, I explained this in Bristol already, but anyway, so she came in with her mother, and she was 3.5 years old, and at the same, she had terrible night attacks, crying attacks during the night. All of a sudden, she started to cry and was hardly to console. And so she came in, and then we sat down, and 2 minutes later, she went to the shelf, took out a doll and the bottle, and brought the doll to me and said, well, you have to feed it. And then I said, well, I will do it. And then she went back to the shelf, put another doll and put it into the far corner of the room. And then she came back, went to the shelf again and took out the doll, a born size doll and a smaller one, and brought both to the mother. And she said to the mother, you have to take care of them very, very carefully. And then I was curious because I didn't know anything about her early story. Just to know, I knew that she was conceived by ISS. And then the mother told me the following: we had four fertilized egg cells, and one was taken into my womb, and that's her. This is my daughter. And 3 other egg cells were frozen, cryopreservation. And after 1 year, we decided to have another child. And then they what's the term in English? They kept them from the frozen state into the life. And they saw that one embryo was dead. And then they put 2 embryos into the mother's womb. And after some weeks, they could see that one embryo was smaller, and finally he died. And the other one thrived well, and that's her brother. And then I said, well, then it's her twin. It's her twin brother. And then she just looked at me and said, well, I didn't know that, but it makes sense, because every morning when my daughter is waking up, the first question is, how is my brother?
Really?
Like she said, well, she asking every time like it's her twin, and said, well, it's indeed. But the most important part was at the end of the session, when I said 10 minutes before the end of the session, I said to the girl, well, we are heading towards the end of the session, and I think we will find a beautiful place to stop here, and that you can live with your mother. And then she stood in the middle of the room, yes, totally still, and said nothing. And then all of a sudden I saw running tears over her cheeks. And then I got what she's doing. Then I said, oh, I'm so sorry. Back then, when you went to your mother, you didn't know where your siblings were. And now these dolls are here. You put them, we are putting them back to the shelf, and next time when you're coming, they are still here. You know where they are. But back then, you didn't really know where they are. And nobody told you. I'm so sorry. Yeah. And then she just looked at me for a while, and then she went to her mother, and she closed the session and went home, and this crying has disappeared.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And what she showed in the play was this doll in the far corner. That was the one who was dead. Yes. And the other one, the twos, she brought to the mother. It's so amazing what she knew, and they have never told about that.
Right.
They never spoken about that.
Well, thank you. That's very moving. So if
And what you are, when I'm reading your book, that reminds me, that makes sense. All of a sudden, what you write in your book, that for me, it makes sense why this girl knows it.
right,
It makes so sense.
and you're referring to the embodied mind,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So if you could influence the technology like the IVF and all those other things that are being used today, what changes would you suggest be made in order to make it more humane and
Yeah,
psychologically traumatizing?
yeah. So what I really recommend to really work with the parents.
Mhm,
What's your intention to have a child?
mhm,
What's the intention for having a child? For instance, I had one woman. She came to me and she said, "Well, we tried it 5 times already, and now we try it again a sixth time, and then we stop it." And then I said, "Well, what's your intention for this baby?" And then she said something like, I could hear, "This baby have to make her happy, to give her a sense in her life." And
mm,
then I said, "Well, if I would be the soul of this baby, what do you think what I would do?" And then she got it and she said, "Well, oh no, this girl doesn't have to come for me, it does have to come for herself or for himself." And then we took the whole session for just finding an intention that's okay for her and okay for the baby, whether the baby is staying or is leaving again.
And what did you come? What did
Pardon?
what intention did she come up with eventually?
She said something. I really want to be here for a baby when the baby is ready to stay with me. I want to be here and be that she can feel safe or he can feel safe, a boy or a girl, that this child can be safe. And I really want to be here when she needs me or he needs me. And if the girl or the boy is coming and is leaving me again, I really want to acknowledge the time she or he was here. And then I went, and this was really fine. And she left, and 3 weeks later, she got pregnant, and she has a girl now. And for me, it was so clear that she really has to find. That's for me a really important question. What's the intention for having a baby? This is one very important question, and that's not only about the technique. It's not a technique; it's a psychological question, and that goes deep back into the ancestral stuff of the parents. We have to really recognize. We have to consider this. Another thing is when it happens, it's really important that when the sperms are taken from the man, that they do it together.
Hmm.
It's not just the man alone in a room and looking at the porno and so on and all these things. That's quite usual today. They do it together.
Oh,
And also when the egg cells are taken from the mother, the father is there. That they have, the cells can feel the connection between the couple. For me, this is so important. And the other thing is when, for instance, with IVF, when the egg cells are brought together with the egg cell is brought together with the sperms. That, for instance, when the parents can't be there, but at least a picture of the parents is there on the desk. That already the energy of the field of the parents is already there, even if this embryo is exposed to intervention coming from the outside and so on, and it's not protected at all. And this is so important for me. And another thing is with ICSI, when the egg cell is lasered,
yes.
and when the zona pellucida is taken away, that then the egg cell is losing the protection. And this is really important to know how much this imprints the baby and the child. And when we go with this and acknowledge it and name it, what's going on, I think it's much more supportive for the Excel that it can go through this procedure.
Excellent, excellent ideas, and very, very, very new. So, have you what sort of resistance? I would imagine that there was resistance. What sort of resistance have you come across? Resistance to your ideas from other psychologists and other doctors in Switzerland and the rest of the world? What sort of objections and resistance?
Yeah, I think the most resistance I have is with people who are not familiar with the pre and perinatal situation or psychology. They just see there is cells are objects. It's not a personality. Embryo is not a personality. They are just objects. When you know about, maybe you know the DVD Future Baby from an Austrian director, editor. She did it in a very beautiful way to show what's possible, what they are doing. And mostly I got this resistance from people who are far away from this very, very early thinking. And what I can see, I was in this institute, recently I was in this institute in St. Gallen again. And I have been there 9 years ago. And this time I was very open how I see it, how it affects a cell and so on. And she was so open. I was so astounded, and she got all these ideas I just told you. She said, "Oh, that's really important to know, because we never know that and knew that before, and we need we need a seminar that with all these things, because it's so important and really important, and for us so supportive when we really can go together in this direction." And this is I think it changes more and more, but so many people are they are not familiar with all this early thinking, and for me I can see it. I say, okay, that's it. Yeah, it's allowed to have this point of view, and if we accept that they may be another point of view too, another thinking too, then it's okay. And just it's not about right and wrong. It's about there are several possibilities as you can see it.
So just shifting a little bit our conversation, was there anything in your own background that you think contributed to your interest in this subject?
Yeah, you are right. It's not about the artificial insemination and so on, about pre and perinatal psychology, because I had a brother, an older brother, 4 years older than me, and he died 1 month after birth. Oh. Then 2 sisters came, and then a miscarriage, and then I was born. And I got the same name, like my brother. And I knew it from very early as a little boy. I knew that I had an older brother, he had the same name as I had. And that was so far okay, but what I had in my feelings all the time, already as a little boy, feelings of loneliness, or feelings of impossibility, and this other thinking, I can do it, whatever I do, it's not enough. I'm wrong, I'm exclusive, people don't want me, and so all these feelings, and I have no idea why is this, because I was really well integrated in my family, and also in school, later in school and so on at the university. I was never pushed in any direction from my parents. But when I did this pre and perinatal psychology, I asked my mother, when I had a workshop with Ray Castellino, I asked my mother, can you tell me more about my brother who died back then, that was 44? 1944. And then she cried like it had happened yesterday.
Mm.
Then I could see how much she was connected with this mourn, with this grief, terrible grief, and what she expected. When I was born, I was the first male child that came in, that I could take away this grief from her. And for me, it wasn't possible. I couldn't do that. It's not my job. But I didn't know that back then. But my feelings went in the same direction. And for me, that was so important to that I had these feelings and how it affects later generations or later siblings when there is something not that when it's an unfinished business. I say this way, when there is an unfinished business in the time before I came in, I take it with me, or maybe it's I think I should take it with me.
So,
And yeah,
is your mother still alive?
no, she died 1999.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So at that time, were you doing any of this work or not yet?
I started to do this work,
So
and I did a lot of self-awareness, my own therapy, and I had really, for me, it was one of the most important phase in my life. And of course, and for me, it was so important to tell my mother, it's not about telling you made something wrong. It's just to know it. For me, it's so precise to know what happened back then. But because you have been we have gone through this terrible loss, and for me, it's really supportive when I just know how it was for you, just to acknowledge it, because she had all the time this feeling of maybe I did something wrong.
yes,
It's of course it's her family story and so on. There is another layer coming in here too, of course. But anyway, for me that was a really important experience I made myself with my mother.
yes. Well, mothers tend to feel responsible if anything is wrong. It's totally
Yeah.
understandable. Yes. So
And there is another experience I made with my youngest son that was so impressive for me. I've never thought about that, because when we had two boys, and then for my fam, it was clear I want to have another child,
oh,
um, whether girl or boy, that doesn't matter. I'm ready to have another child.
right.
And then I sat with this energy. I'm really open. I'm really be open for another child, to have the energy for another child again. And I didn't know. But we were already pregnant. And then as soon as I knew it, I said, well, okay, I can say, yo, I accept and I welcome this child. And I did. But later, and the birth was really beautiful. That's another story, but it was really beautiful. And I loved this child. But any time when he was about 3 or 4 years old, 3 to 4 years, every time we had conflict with each other, we had an argument. Then he said, "Papa, you don't love me."
Ooh,
And it was such a pain. It was like a knife into my heart, because it at the moment, at the present time, it wasn't true at all. But every time he said this sentence, and then said, "Oh, maybe he knows something I don't remember anymore." And then I went back to this, the very early beginning. And then one day I told him, "Oh, Philip, now I can see what you want to tell me." And I told him what happened to me back then. I wasn't ready. And it wasn't about you. I just wasn't ready about having a child. It wasn't about you. But as you were already, we have been already here. And for you, it was like, I'm not loving you. I can see you, this situation so good. I'm so sorry that it happened back then. And he just was listening to me, said nothing, but this sentence never appeared again. Never. And for me, it touched me deeply in my heart to see how much he was clinging to something that was so important to him, that was so irritating for him, because he could feel in the present time how much I love him, but there was something not done, not clear, that was not done back then, and he was connected with this one, and then he could let it go. And now we have a beautiful connection with each other. Yes, and his own family now, and so on. And it's, but for me that was so important for my my way doing all this situation, these sessions with children and families.
So you have two grown-up sons, right?
Three. There are three, yeah.
And have any of them sort of followed in your footsteps?
No, not so far, not. The middle son, I call him, he's the social worker in our town here. he didn't do any. He didn't go to the matura, to the college, or did an apprenticeship. He refused to do anything. But what he does, he has such a beautiful job now, and he knows nearly everybody in town here. When I'm talking about people, oh, I know this, I know that, and he is in some way the psychologist, and the others are teachers, and of course they are familiar with what I'm doing, and they bring it in their job as teachers, but they don't know, they are not in this field.
So, what's in the future for you? Are you working on a book? Are you expanding in any other ways? What's in the future?
So at the moment, I'm really I'm busy with the translation of this book that appeared in German, and the second edition is appearing showing, it's coming now, editing just now, and. I hope that we have finished the translation into English until the end of August, and then I hope to find an editor, and then that way I can edit it and publish it. That's important for me. And then I think a lot about my experience with children who came into life with assisted reproductive technologies. What I know, what they tell me, and I think that's really worth it, that people just know what's really going on here, because it's so not known. It's just, it's handled with it, but it's not. There is something that goes on a much deeper level as we imagine. I am convinced.
Yeah.
At the same time, I believe, that's my personal my personal belief. The soul can't be forced to do something. She decides when she goes through this, for instance, artificial techniques. She has something to say. Okay, I have decided to be here. I want to be here, and this impulse comes from the health place. And I told also in this institute, you can do everything to bring an egg cell and a sperm together. But the one thing that you can't do it is to implant. That does the embryo itself. And that's, for me, that's the most amazing part of the life, this transition. When the soul said, okay, whatever it is, whatever my parents are at, I decide to come here, and I want to be here.
So what is your sort of definition of the soul? What to you is the soul?
The soul, oh, that's so difficult to have a definition. For me, it's a force coming from a place where this welcoming is cultivated, where this welcoming is living. Coming from a place where this force says, okay, I am ready to go further. I want to do something. I want to I trust myself that I can do it. It's a deep force that can evolve, can grow in a materialistic layer as its cell and egg cell and sperm, and coming here in, and it goes back again to this place where you came from. For me, it's so difficult to say what it really is. But when I'm working with babies, I can really feel this strong power of I want to be here. I'm looking out. I'm connecting with you, but I want to be here. This is so. It touches me every time when I see babies.
Well, that's good and well, but what about babies who make a really bad souls that make a really bad decision,
Yeah.
like they go into a woman who is addicted and who is abusive, and child, if it ever, is even born, is going to be abused and physically and mentally suffer. Why would a soul want to go into a woman like that?
That's a question we can't answer. It's not possible. For me, of course, that's uh, for me. It's so difficult to say. Okay, it's that or this or that reason. Um, when we look from the human aspect, then I agree what you are saying. It's a bad decision.
Mhm.
But how can we know it? What is really bad? For me, that's a philosophical question. Do we really know what's bad and what is good? And are we allowed to decide what's good and bad? That for me a really, really deep question. I can't answer it. I just can go with it. Okay, why I so often think, why are babies, as you just said, with coming through a mother who is addicted, or in Syria, why they are born there and so on. What the hell is the sense that they are coming in? I can't answer it. I just can admire, okay, there must be something we don't understand.
So, what does being human mean to you?
Human means for me to welcome our next, to say, okay, however you are, I welcome you, and I really want to be with you. And of course, if there are human beings who are against me, for instance, of course, that's so difficult. But for me, the most important part of you, a human being, is to go to the other, to go into connection, to go in relationships, however they are. We are beings that have to go. We can't go alone. We have to go together. We have to connect with each other, and that makes me trust in it's possible when we really see the other, how he or she is, and then when we have troubles with each other, we can talk about that. But the deep place is, I welcome you however you are. You are here. Of course, I protect myself if somebody is attacking me or so. That's totally different. But for me, it's so important to work with this inner place of welcoming when I'm working with babies or with families or with clients. They can feel it, that they welcome it, them, and then we can look at what's troubling. In what troubles are in their life, and then we can look from this perspective from the resource to the traumatic place, and not vice versa.
Well, I can really feel that emanating from you. I can really feel your care and your dedication and your welcoming. My question is, have you been able to also apply that to your own relationships, like to your wife, for example?
Yeah. Mhm. Yeah, for me that was one I had to learn. Of course, when when we fall in love, then it's everything is blue, everything is matches and so on. And then when we really love each other, I really had to learn. I really want to accept and to see my wife as she is, and not as I like to have her. That's so important. And when I'm looking at, I'm working also with couples. That's for me a really important place. Can I really accept and welcome the other one as she or he is? And if there are difficulties we have between each other, that's not the problem about the welcoming, it's the problem how we can hear each other, how we can really listen. Okay, oh, I didn't know that you have this perspective of the problem. I didn't know that. Thank you for telling me. And that opens and another principle of the mutual cooperation and support. Then when I feel welcome, I'm much easier open to really cooperate with the other one, to support each other, the other one. But for me, it's really to learn, really to accept the other one as he or she is. That's really a challenge. I can tell you by myself.
Yes, yes, it certainly is. So how would you spend the last day of your life?
How do you?
How would you spend the last day of your life, the last 24 hours? You know, you have 24 hours to live. How would you spend it?
Yeah, I can tell you, I quite often I think about that. How would I want to go away from this earth?
Mhm.
And what I can do is just to acknowledge the time when I was here, that it was okay to be here. That's my way I went through, and it's okay what I had to go through. Even there have been things that have been very difficult. This is my life, and I'm so glad that I had this possibility to be in relationship with my wife or with my families, with my sons and their families, with my friends and so on, and just to acknowledge how it is, and then that I can let it go. It's for me, I don't have the desire, oh, I have to do this or that again before I leave. No, what I did so far, I'm really happy what I could go, where I could go through.
You mentioned some difficult times. You don't have to answer this question if you don't want to, but I was just wondering, can you tell us a little bit about the difficult times that you went through?
Yes, I nowadays I can talk about that. It was one of the most difficult time of my life. That was about 30 years ago. We had in a group therapy, there was a man who died, and nobody knew that he had a heart disease. Even he didn't know it. And back then, as a psychotherapist, body psychotherapist, we had no support at all. It was difficult to work, and there were all these stories were made about what they are doing with body psychotherapy and so on. There was a lot of shit that was told about, and I knew I have no possibility to be set free by the court. And because I knew a lot about this man, and I couldn't tell it, because that was I had my professional, how do you say it? It's Berufsgeheimnis.
Yeah, you couldn't tell it. Personal information that.
No, I couldn't tell it, and I had to take it for myself. And we were sentenced. Of course, and I lost a lot of money, but that was another thing. But what I earned um, through all this, I came to this place. What I'm doing now. I met Ray Castellino. I met this body psychotherapist, Jack Rosenberg. Maybe you know him, who died some years ago. And I met Ray Castellino. And nowadays, I can look back and see, okay, I had to go. There was the way I had to go through to really come further to forward to another place where it really, where it's my place now. But back then, I never wished to anybody he had to go through what I had to went through. And I'm so glad I had my wife, I had my family, I had good friends. And I knew I haven't done anything wrong because I was working with him in a very soft way. But all of a sudden, and there is a doctor of the medicine who told me, who is expert in this. He said, "Well, you can sit in your chair, and all of a sudden,
Yeah,
you are dead, and nothing is you can't. There are no signs before." And they said, "Well, why you did psychotherapy with him? That's the reason why." What can you do?
exactly.
I had to learn that the juristic uh, um, thinking is totally different than the psychological thinking.
Right.
That's totally different, and it doesn't worth it to fight against it. It doesn't worth it. It just for me it was this: just accept it and go on, follow the next step, and that's where I'm here now, and I'm really glad, and at the same time, I never wish to somebody to go through this really difficult time.
I mean, getting into court, getting into legal battles is just toxic. It's just
Yeah, yeah,
horrible. Well, I'm
yeah.
glad that you are where you are, and I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing. Do you have a website that we can tell people about?
No, I don't have. That's the bad. That's the thing. I should do it, but at the moment, yeah, of course, I could do it. I'm working on it, but at the moment I don't have it. I'm sorry.
Got to get a website. You got to get a website. So anyway, really, thank you for joining us, Klaus. This was totally fascinating. I wish we could continue longer, but we have certain time limits.
Yeah.
My guest was once again Klaus Käppeli, and that's spelled Kaeppeli. Klaus Käppeli, and he lives in Switzerland, in St. Gallen, and you can Google him and find him. He is a fantastic therapist, one of the very few who deals with children born as a result of artificial insemination and similar new what's called third-party conceptions. My guest next week will be Scott Tate, who is a professional trainer. He works with adults, often dealing with a movement disorder or other chronic concerns such as Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, dystonia, or other neurodegenerative conditions. A very interesting man. I hope you can catch us next week. Once again, Klaus, thank you very much. Bye for now.
Thank you, Thomas. That was a great joy to join with you and to be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.